Hi. Just want to make sure that we're streaming. Yes, we are. Turn and then shutting it off so that it doesn't echo. All right. Mm. Good morning. There's just a ton knocking at my door, and I want to speak it. I had a watershed moment yesterday in showing up um, in mm, I guess you'd call a new, more integrated expression. And this morning, I was realizing the significance of it because the way that the experience arose, which it just arose naturally, which is part of the point. So, yesterday on Facebook, oh shoot, I have a low battery. All right, I'm gonna go plug this in and I'll be right back. We'll edit this later. Ah, okay, we're plugged in. Let me get back in frame, sitting. Um, all right. So yesterday, I did a live on Facebook that was me teaching, I guess you'd say, the integration of La Lu's reinventing organizations schema for consciousness of organizations. I integrated that with what I've been talking about, where humanity is growing and maturing right now. And I've been talking about three main consciousnesses or pattern. Yesterday I was calling them patterns, patterns of meaning making, basically maps of meaning, patterns of meaning, and that generally people fall into currently people are falling into one of three major buckets or maps of meaning. The first being belonging, or the most dominant one being belonging. The next most dominant one being self-authoring. And then there's people who are moving into the co-creative mental model. And then I talked about how those three consciousnesses map on to Lalou's consciousnesses of organizations or cultures, organizational cultures. And I was talking about it because have been doing work with a client, and what I'm helping him do is see where he is at and where his culture is predominantly, and then helping him see in his mind, oh, okay, that's what's going on here, and then seeing like where there might be a mismatch or opportunity for growth or opportunity to be a cooperative influencer in his organization, which is his desire. Different clients are doing, achieving different things. Just feeling really grateful. So I was sharing this, and the way that it ended up being shared came in a very feminine way. I was simply futzing around playing with these ideas because a Facebook acquaintance of mine, a person I don't even know in real life, had posted something, and the discussion had become around um, sick red culture and sick green culture. So that's a reference to Lalou in his book Reinventing Organizations, which of course I was already familiar with. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah. He was commenting that red and green, red and green have an interesting relationship. And so that got me thinking. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. And then I was thinking, oh yeah, well, I had already been doing this work with my client, but this just piqued my playfulness and my interest, my natural curiosity. So I started playing yesterday morning, and then I did this presentation, and it was very spontaneous, but then it was very well illustrated with graphics that I created with ChatGPT. And it like just beautifully illustrated my ideas. I was very grateful, and I'm like kind of blown away with how good it is now. Um, and so I had these beautiful graphics that were really illustrating my ideas really well, I felt. And I was excited, and I got to present it, and I presented it in a masculine way. I presented it in a masculine way. I mean, having the structured graphics, having it was pretty structured story. The way that I was talking, the way that I was presenting was much more masculine and structured than I have been in a long time. But the way that it arose was from a very feminine way, right? So my chance to show up in this masculine arose through curiosity, no intention to do this yesterday. Okay, so it arose through play. It arose through beauty, honestly, because I asked ChatGPT to help me visualize this and put these ideas into this visual schema, and it just created a beautiful representation, clear, like right off the bat. And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, so it was beauty inspired, and I did it. And what I'm reflecting on now is all after the fact, like not really realizing the significance of it, not really realizing, the balance of masculine and feminine that I'd shown up in, not really realizing, or even like having the awareness of, oh, I'm showing up pretty masculine. It was really only this morning when I was like critiquing my performance, because there's a lot of verbal tics, right, yeah, like, oh, well, that's because you're nervous, and there's a nervous energy. There's a nervous energy in me right now. So yeah, I feel it right now. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. So where did that come from? Why was there so much anxiety? Okay. And then I was realizing, well, it was because I created the way that he showed up, my masculine energy showed up, he showed up, or my intellect showed up. Let's just call it my intellect instead of he. My intellect, the way that my intellect ended up showing up arose through a very feminine process in which he did not rehearse. He didn't even think about what he was going to say. Um, it sounds like I'm dissociating from my intellect when I talk about it like that. But I do want to, I mean, it is a very different, in my direct experience, it is a different energetic experience to be in a more yang energy. Maybe I just need to switch to yin and yang. I'm not sure. It feels columnar. It feels um, more rigid. It feels more contained. It feels more linear. I know I'm naming these things and I'm saying it feels, it feels, it feels. And people are like, those aren't feelings. Well, there's an energetic signature of it that this vessel experiences that is clearly different from other energetic signals, like when I'm in my very flowy feminine. So then why was he anxious? Why was my masculine? I mean, I'm talking about subjects that, well, I haven't presented Lalu before publicly. So maybe my yang energy, I wasn't as solid as that energy could have felt because I wasn't prepared as that part of me would have liked me to be. Okay. So there's a negotiation going on between my inside of myself, between the part of me that wants to show up in excellence and not use verbal tics like or right or okay, there's an internal conversation going on inside of me that's kind of a power struggle. And I'm feeling the column that I described and then tightness in my stomach. Unease in my gut area. Fear, a little bit of panic, sadness. Okay, so I'm just going to name the pattern that I'm noticing that happened yesterday, and we'll see what happens when we go from there. So through this experience, I'm noticing that yesterday I playfully and mindlessly and femininely um, went live and did a presentation that my full self was feeling uncertain about and also desirous to complete because there's another part of me, a, a larger part, I guess you could say. I think, well, I named it that. Okay. That says go with it. You've got a desire. Oh, it's honoring the desire. So we have to, okay, that's the piece I haven't brought in yet. There's a desire. All right. There's a desire. The desire is the desire masculine or feminine? I don't know. it's just there. It's like a fire through the central channel, desire. So there's a creative desire. It's like the creative energy is a desire. And I don't, is that masculine or feminine? It's the desire was to show up so that I could be messy and get a first draft, because part of my creative process, which my entire being is on board with, because it's very, I think, my entire being is on board with it because it is wise, is to show up, iterate. So that's the way I've created, and it works. So I showed up, I spoke it. It was not a disaster at all. It was good and um, useful. And I'll take that. I'll transcribe it, whatever. I don't have to transcribe it. The machines do all of that for me, and then critique it. And of course, if other people listen to it, I will ask for feedback. And I am already getting it. I've already had a conversation about it last night. So I get the feedback from human beings and from the machine. And then I'm telling a story, basically. Yeah, telling a story. I'm telling a wise story in this case. I'm telling the story of how we grow, how humans grow to the best of my wisdom, which includes deep, 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 regular intellectual, scientific study and practice, and also a mystical experiences, if you want to call it, or embodied transcendent gnosis around what else is possible. Yeah. So, all right. So wisdom was like, do it. Desire and wisdom, like, do it, do it. Then when I showed up, and feminine energy or yin energy. Oh, okay. Let me back up. Yin energy came first. Play, play, play. Fun, fun, fun. Beauty, beauty, beauty. Wow, wow, wow. Let's do it. Desire arose. Wisdom was like, yes. Then I did it. And then yang energy, or that masculine that I definitely was in, saw him show up. Okay, I critiqued myself as having verbal tics and exhibiting what I would call anxious energy. No shame in that. No shame in that. But the fact that I have to say no shame in that means there's a part of me that believes there's shame in there. All right, hold on, let me feel that. Shame for, oh, I'm comparing myself. I'm comparing myself. Okay. I'm comparing myself to a particular person. I'm comparing myself to a way of being or an archetype that is shows up in my life. And I love this presentation. My ex-husband was in this presentation, and so was my tantric partner. And I love this energy. And this is part of my golden shadow, I believe. I mean, and now that I'm sitting here like going, well, obviously, because why is that not in me? I'm asking. And I'm very attracted to it in others. So, what is that energy? It's attention to the small. It's attention to the small. It's love of detail and love of excellence and love of, well, beauty in the small. Like the frame of reference is smaller, is going down smaller, as opposed to my frame of reference is going up bigger. It's absolutely fantastic because it's like when I say my, I mean like my presenting dominant energy is going up bigger. Like so I see beauty in the group co-creation. I see beauty in the bigger, like out there stuff happening. That's my main like frame of beauty reference, I guess you could say. I don't know. And then I'm aware that others and my ex-husband and my tantric partner are both that way. They like go down very, 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 very look very, very, very closely at the and see the beauty in the small. And like as I'm saying that, I'm like, well, I've had to do that. I've had to go down and look closely at the beauty in the small to really understand relationship. Yeah. So I am developing that strength. And my looking of the small and the particular has been my interoceptive awareness that has been related to my emotional and energetic expressions. And these two men, their interest isn't that. Their interest is other things outside themselves that are also, though, in the highly detailed and the very nuanced and very patient, exacting, precise. In fact, this is also my father's energy, my biological father's energy. Erwin Rivlin. Erwin Rivlin. He had this energy. He was an engineer. They're all like that. They're all have the engineering mind. Yeah. Highly analytic, highly detail oriented, and they build excellence of the small. And there's tremendous beauty there. I loved watching my ex-husband in that energy. We used to call him the optimizer, and he would iterate on recipes. And he used best recipe. I believe that's what it's called. And it's the perfect book for the optimizer. It's got the best recipe. It's got the recipe that produces the most desirable, delicious outcome, no matter the complexity or the form. So I, and then he was that way about sound and film, all of it, everything that he did, computer science, everything he did was looked up very closely, and optimized and with patience and iteration and excellence, true excellence. Just what what just popped into my mind was like, I wonder if there was moral injury there at work. because if he wasn't allowed to be in that kind of level of excellence, that could feel really, it could feel affrontive and like a moral injury of some sort. Like I'm not allowed to do good work here. That would suck. I think that probably a lot of people feel that way, actually. That may be a projection. I was like, I felt that way. I felt that way at my last job, that I was experiencing a moral injury potential. I wasn't sure. I wouldn't have named it back then because I didn't have that. I just was very confused in my transcendence about and my transcendence and not yet integrated that my wisdom around what's okay and what we were doing was crossing boundaries for my wisdom in terms of what was okay for an organization and for me as being the responsible party for our clients. Even though I wasn't in charge, I wasn't the boss. I was hired as a contractor, but still, just because of my mother energy, I felt responsible. Okay, I'm definitely wandering. I'm definitely in this feminine wandering. And I actually do, I want to go because I want to go on with my day. But I started this, I think I named it something about transcendence. Oh my God, I've been avoiding the really juicy, explosive thing that I was supposed to come on here and say. I can cut this. Okay, this is going to be hard because it has something to do with Judaism. Okay, and God and atheism. One of the things that I noticed in transcendence is that when we have a resistance for something, it's the same attachment as having a hunger for something. So like one of my big shadows that I carried with me for my whole life and really like came online while I was in my transcendence and I was witnessing and noticing and talking about it with my partner was that I have a part of me that gets limerent. In other words, I form unhealthy attachments or bonds to um, unrequited love, unreturned love, and intermittent reinforcement is the worst for me. And there have been periods in my life where these men, I think it's only been with men, I'll question that, but yeah, particularly romantic situations. This last one was not romantic, it was platonic, which was interesting. Ah, right, right. There's more there because it really was platonic. And then in the limerent pattern, it was very twisted. It was very twisted through shame. It's very interesting. Okay, I don't want to go into that. Anyway, I noticed that I had this my shadow, the limerent pattern. Why was I talking about that? Transcendence. Um, oh, so this is what is limerent? Limerence is a hunger for, right? It's a hunger for. So I'm like feeling into that, feeling, oh, that's obviously an attachment. And like when we think of attachment, we think of like a hunger for. Well, also there's resistance So the other gigantic shadow that showed up in me was about holding my boundaries, speaking my truth, saying, no, this doesn't work for me, or saying, I can do this and this, just this and no more. And my boundaries were being crossed like in a major way at work, around money and labor. Okay. I still have resistance in my body over money and labor. And I still have some hunger for unrequited love. So both of those shadows are not completely integrated or transmuted. That's the word that I like to use. In other words, I feel them. I can feel that energy. If I concentrate and tap in, I can feel the energy. It's there. It's not gone. It's still held in my body, but it's much lighter, much, much lighter, which means that I'm much more free to act in freedom from that hunger and freedom from that resistance. Like I'm way more able to speak my truth now. I'm so proud of myself. And I am way less likely to even allow that pattern of inconsistency because I understand that it's an unhealthy pattern for a human being. Like that's not what I want. It's not within my wisdom for a lasting relationship that would last over time and space. Yeah. Oh, big moving in my gut when I said that. Gratitude. Okay. All right. So when I was in Transcendence, I noticed that attachment works both ways, that craving for and the aversion to. In fact, in Vipassana, those are the two energies that he names as well. Both are attachment and very clear. And so part of my wisdom was like, okay, well, let's let go of the attachments that you don't find useful. And one of the big attachments I didn't find useful was, well, those two, right? Yeah, clearly. Um, and obviously I've been doing the work to like let those go. In other words, transmuting that experience. And I can talk about what that looks like later. Um, but yeah, it's just very clear to me. And so I've been clearing what I ended up noticing, which was resistance to my own mystic, this way that I'm showing up right here, ashamed, embarrassed. Um, Even though, okay, so interesting, because like I did show up like this through bypassing, or maybe I was showing up like this before I felt shame, and then I was shamed. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I can't really tell. But at some point, shame and transcendence got mixed in big time. whether it was before I was publicly ostracized and kicked out of the family for it and called crazy, or after. I'm not sure. Or maybe it was a combination of both, or maybe it was my internalized shame that we brought it about, and that wouldn't make sense. It would just be it would be in me and in the family system, all of it. It compounded and it created this. Okay. So I've broken through that clearly because I've integrated it. And I deeply understand why people are completely annoyed with people who are in transcendence and try to go out into the world and lead from there or relate primarily from there, because the four agreements aren't honored. We don't keep our word. I mean, if we're skilled, we can not keep our word and then also communicate about it. But there's many people who just don't keep their word, change things all the time. I understand where that comes from because I've been in I've been in that state. I understand why it makes sense. Okay. From there, we feel like we're always doing our best from that, but from the external uh consensus consciousness, it doesn't look like that because we're breaking our norms and we're breaking our patterns, and we're maybe doing things like taking more freedom, because I think that's one of the ways that many people have been out of balance, is that they haven't been free to get their own needs met or even ask for their own needs met to be met. Don't make assumptions. Well, part of right, where when you get into the transcendence state, you are seeing, you're starting to experience the world in from the energetic point of view. I don't know how to say this other way. It's like it's a different way of being. So there is a deep knowing that we have been hiding things from ourselves. We're seeing ourselves differently. We're seeing our own patterns differently. We're seeing ourselves and our own patterns differently, and that which means that we're seeing others and their patterns differently. All right. So then we're all of a sudden offering points of view and opinions and stories that can very much sound like we're making assumptions. And maybe we are, because we're seeing differently. Okay. And then there's a fourth agreement. Let's see. Keep your word. Do your best. Don't make assumptions. Somebody's watching this and going, shouting at me right now. I know. Okay. Um, do your best. Keep your word. Don't make assumptions. These are all things that truly allow the human to cooperate and have clean and clear agreements. Um, so, we can get back through good communication. We can get back to honoring all of these things, actually, keeping our word, um, doing our best. In other words, communicating our priorities have changed, and our best looks like this now. Not making assumptions by truly getting into compassion for consensus consciousness and understanding where uh, well, how people grow. I think that's the main understanding there, and then developing the skills to communicate better there. And then there's a fourth agreement, which I can't remember. Oh, well, we'll come back to it. Anyway, I think I might be Yeah, I might be deflecting again. All right, so then I realized that I had developed shame about my transcendence, and I have been actively integrating it, and now my shame is gone. And I'm full of gratitude for it, and love. And that allows me to like talk about these things from here and be creative with it and playful with it now. Um, so then I was thinking about atheism and how, again, like from my wisdom, I know aversion is just as strong of attachment as craving. So people who are atheists or find like revulsion in that idea or fear in that idea, or again, and not just intellectually, because like there is no intellectual argument for God other than, I would say, pattern recognition. Like the intellect can really grasp onto pattern recognition. So, it could make its own determination about nature, because there are certainly patterns in nature. There's certainly natural law. There's certainly consequences. The consequences could change from moment to moment and from group to group and from consciousness to consciousness, and they do, but there are consequences. So maybe rational mind can come to some sort of larger power, higher power. And there is in transcendence, there's actually there's, like I said, an energetic awareness, and also the ability to like watch things be co-created in the moment through you, through your own self, through your own energy, through your own behavior, through your own action. I watched myself turn things around over and over and over through my love and compassion. You can watch it happen. Watch it happen. Watch it happen. There's a moment, there's a choice that I can lean in and be loving, like with my energy. I'm not talking about a scheme or some sort, or even an action, just energetically. It comes through my voice. My actions will naturally flow, and it's we create harmony and beauty together. I've watched that happen over and over and over. Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. Okay, really want to finish this up. I noticed the resistance to God is just like any other attachment. And I've been curious. And of course, then there was the situation that happened for me and my family and my community, my where my experience, even though I was not in a psychosis, I didn't even name myself as enlightened, because again, I was attached to my materialist, rationalist uh, personality, my expressions from the past. And the only thing that I was showing like super commitment to and confidence around wasn't even my transcendence or my perennial wisdom. It was mostly around that I had true knowledge and wisdom in my own vocation. which there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that's not psychosis to believe that I have new ideas that would be useful to organizational and enterprising systems. That's my field of expertise. Mm, it really bothers me when people just assume that I must have been like claiming I was a prophet or in some sort of psychosis. I was grounded. I quit my job and I was crying out of shame and sadness for that. And I was complaining about pain, which ended up being, I ended up needing surgery for or having surgery for. I think at another time I would have waited, but it seemed urgent at the time. Terrible times. Terrible. And then, I have these parents and they are in their 80s and I love them so much. And they also have a deep love and commitment for Judaism and the Jewish people. And they've been studying with the same rabbi and scholar for, I don't know, 30 years. Yet they can't receive me and my transcendence, cannot receive it. Um, I cannot show up too joyful or expanded with Care Bear eyes in my energy with my mother. What's that about? Scared, fear. That's fear. She's afraid of my transcendent energy. So that got me thinking. I'm like, okay, she studies with a rabbi for 30 years. She's resistant to transcendence and energy. Just last week, a couple of weeks ago, I proclaimed loudly that in Judaism, we have a pathway to going up and bringing down through the tree of life, the Sephirot, the Kabbalistic. It's, a branch of Kabbalah. It's a branch of mysticism. There must be a branch out there that is goes up and brings down into the body. I mean, the Sephirot are it's an embodiment of that. We also, in our culture, in Christianity, there is the archetype or the myth or the maybe a true historical figure or maybe an archetype, unsure, Jesus. Jesus is frightening for Jewish consciousness. It was for me. Um, Frightening. I'm just going to sit with that because I still have some constriction in my stomach. And it could be that it's around the topic of at least Jesus because there's so much resistance and huge fear and resistance to Christianity, maybe even bordering on disgust or hatred in some bodies. I'm not saying consciously, I'm not saying in action. I'm just talking about you stay on your side, I'll stay over here, and please do not come at me with, any kind of conversion talk or Christian talk or Jesus talk. Okay, that's in the body for Jews. I'm feeling it like right here. It's like a no. It's a line, probably passed on through generations of attempted conversions, and whoever survived in this tiny, 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 tiny little population must have had to say no a lot, a lot, a lot. So maybe, we're born with it. Anyway, that could be the block to the transcendence, because somehow that story, that man in Western culture got tagged with the energetic transcendence that my mother clearly hates. And I have witnessed in other contexts, and it's not just Jewish, just any intellectual mind, rationalist mind, feels resistance to that transcendence, because it's seducing, it's beautiful, it's probably is frightening. It is seducing, and it is beautiful, and it probably is frightening, because they don't want to be seduced. They don't want to experience the beauty, and they're not, it's probably all happening unconsciously. And then I want to say, okay, well, maybe that explains why Kabbalah, which is actually the process of going up and bringing it down through the Sephirot, going up, bringing it down, spreading it across, going up, bringing it down, spreading it across. Look at our bodies. Yeah. Well, it would make sense how, like, that, if that has become associated in the Western mind, because, Jesus or Christ consciousness is also Buddha consciousness, which is also Krishna consciousness, which is also an aspect of the Jewish God with 72 names. It's probably multiple aspects that would come together to create that. And there's other energies, obviously, in the Jewish concept of God. Yeah. Like judgment, din. I'm not an expert in the Sephirot. What I'm an expert in is this process. And knowing that every tradition has that story. Every tradition has that basically story, if not mechanism. I mean, Kabbalah, the Sephirot is the mechanism. And I'm wondering if in the Jewish tradition, at least the Western Jewish tradition, at least in the spaces and places and faces that I intersected in, if there is an embodied resistance to that transcendence, which has blocked us from both going up. So then, of course, we can't bring it back down. If we can't even go up, we can't even go up. So we're just stuck down here. We're stuck down here. And we're stuck here in the intellect. So somebody who is Jewish, I guess it's me. It's me. Somebody who's Jewish needs to come out and say, hey, guys, we need to look at that somatic response that you're having to Care Bear eyes, loving, putting my hand on your heart and eye gazing with you and breathing. Maybe we get to look at why that's so scary and we're so resistant to it. And understand that in our own tradition, there is a pathway to wisdom. And where we're at right now, or where the group center is, it's in belonging. It's in belonging. Clearly, it's in belonging. It's in victim, villain, hero. It's in belonging. There's nothing wrong with that. Most adults are in belonging. But what I'm telling you is that the culture is growing. The culture is growing. The United States culture is growing. The Western culture is growing. The Western culture has still most people in belonging, but there's a large chunk of people who moved into the creative orientation and are anchored there. That's why there's so much individualism and so much disregard for belonging right now. And they are going to grow into, and many of them are growing into green, which is mature creative orientation, and growing into co-creative orientation. Healthy co-creative orientation, if it's not just intellectually driven, which it won't be sustainable if it is just intellectually driven, because it's co-creation and it's about relationship. True embodiment of the co-creative orientation requires that person has gone up and brought it back down and then spread it out. That's enough. I gotta go. I got it out. Thank you. Thank you for anybody who watched, and more to come.